Mina, konnichiwa, JesusFreakinGamer here. I'm actually doing this in the afternoon, which is a bit unusual, a bit weird. But you know, just whenever during the day I get the chance, I want to throw that video out. I wonder if I should plan these videos and actually say Mina, konnichiwa, konbanwa, ohayo gozaimasu, and just have a video planned for that point in the day, instead of just telling you whatever time of the day it actually is here for me. I'm not really good at planning just yet, so I'm just keep doing it the way I've been doing it. 2 Samuel chapter 17, verse 14. The context here is Hushai he's kind of like David's spy. He's been left in the court of Absalom, David's son, who usurped the throne from his father David. And Hushai is a counselor, an advisor, and he is there to defeat the counsel of a guy called Ahithophel. Now, Ahithophel was probably the chief advisor of David and of Absalom. It says in verse 23, 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 23, now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the advice of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. So David really trusted this guy. This guy was apparently incredibly wise. He was able to read people, read the situation, and usually call it spot on. So he gives his advice to Absalom on how to get rid of David, how to kill him. Hushai then contradicts Ahithophel's advice and says, this isn't so good. I have another idea. And by all means read that. That's going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 17, verses 1 through 13. I'm going to keep on advising you to read the book of 1 and 2 Samuel because it's so great. What I'm going to draw from is verse 14. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, once they'd heard the advice of both, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel. For the Lord had purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. God's taking care of David and looking after him, despite the fact that a lot of this was largely his fault, due to his adultery with Bathsheba and his murder of her previous husband Uriah. He repented of his sin, and God was still with him. God looked after him, and God was on his side despite that sin. God really did forgive him. And so the main point I wanted, so that alone is a point. The other point I wanted to draw from is that it looks like, you're just looking at two people advising this usurper. He got both of their advices honestly sound pretty solid and pretty spot on. They both have their good points. And Absalom went with the one who had been his father's friend. He acknowledges him as his father's friend in verse 17 of 2 Samuel chapter 16. But he said, hey, as I was with David, I'll be with you. Absalom trusted him, and he gave advice to contradict Ahithophel, which ended up killing Absalom, as will be seen in the next chapter, depending on what point I preach on. And all of this to say, I am so bad at getting to a point immediately. There was nothing supernatural at work here. There were no miracles to protect David. There were no miracles to provide for David. God provided for David in a purely natural way through spies, through intrigue, through people who sided with him over his son Absalom. It was all very natural, very explainable, but God's hand was still in it. God was still with David. And I just want to encourage you guys that if you don't see some miraculous thing happening in your life, if you don't see some miraculous healing for the thing that's bugging you, like I have asthma and irritable bowel syndrome, and I've prayed for it, and God hasn't physically healed me, it doesn't mean God's abandoned me. It doesn't mean God's abandoned you. God works through very purely natural means. And it's totally God. Even though it's totally natural, it's totally God. Let's not forget that the God who's behind all the angels and all the supernatural and heaven and stuff, let's not forget He's also the God who created the earth, who created you and knit you together in your mother's womb. And has a wonderful and magnificent plan for your life in this world, in this fleshly, sinful, broken body. God has a plan for you right here and now. Lots of natural stuff going on because He's the God of everything, the natural as well as the supernatural. So please keep that in mind as you live your daily lives. And guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I love you. God bless.